Okay, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. David, if you could read the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. Then a period of public comment, and then consideration of special town meeting, consideration of special election, discussions on both of those items. Then Planning Board, John Higley has a presentation. It's a discussion regarding possible zoning warrant article if a fall special town meeting is called. Then Agricultural Preservation Restriction with George Fisk. Then routine business, town administrator report, selectmen reports, approve the minutes of 7/13/17, 7/27/17, set the next meeting for September 26, 2017 at 8 a.m. for a tax classification hearing to be continued, and then September 27th at 6 p.m. Then adjourn to executive session, not to return to open session. And then executive session in accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21(2), to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, CM&D Director / Facilities Manager and/or Facilities Manager and/or Clerk of the Works positions, Sean Colleen. That's it.
Okay. Anybody have any amendments or want to make a motion?
There was some concern about the breadth of the executive session discussion. I proposed that it would read to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel hyphen facilities manager / probationary CM&D director.
I second that.
So we're going to make a decision based on the agenda? That's fine.
I think the open meeting law concern is that when you list a series of positions, the selection of the position should be done in public session, not
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
the selection of the position being offered should be in public session, not done in private section, in executive session. That was the fix for this.
So what would your proposal be? Be facilities manager and probationary CM&D director?
Yeah, that's the proposal.
And what about clerk of the works? That's not part of this?
And it's based on our vote at the July 27th meeting. I'm particularly concerned about the facilities manager position. We've got so many projects that are going on. I want to fill this position quickly. We've got about $300 million in projects from the capital improvement program and the library project. So that's one of the reasons for the motion.
I don't think we had a vote on facilities manager at July 27th meeting.
That was part of the CM&D director job. The job description includes both positions.
I just don't think this is a good way to make policy on an agenda. And we could have it as an agenda item on the agenda. But I don't think we should be determining what we're going to do based on the how an agenda is phrased.
Well, then how about holding this executive session item until we get to that on the warrant, on the agenda, and have to complete the discussion at that time?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I would do that.
So if I could, then let's move approval of the agenda for all the items through the title executive session, and then we'll deal with what that is later.
Okay.
Second?
All right. Motion second. All in favor? That's great.
I'll abstain.
All right. We passed an agenda. Can I go home now? Okay, public comment, we've got 3 people. We're going to ask you to keep it really quickly, keep it really short, move quickly so that we can get to the other items. Usually we say 2 minutes. Peter, you were first on the list. I think because you put your name next to the number 1.
You know, you always have a way of clearing things up for me. Thank you, Mike. The subject I wanted to address was the CMND director, and I'm quite distressed as to what's going forward. I look at the vote. I hear that the vote of the board was to hire Eric Johnson, and if he declined, that you'd consider the second candidate. And you also went through a peer review process and reached that conclusion on a, I guess it was a 3-to-1 vote eventually. I would contend that Eric Johnson did agree to take the job and began negotiations.
Yeah, I don't think we're not going to talk about this. This is not public comment in the sense that we're talking about a personnel matter, Peter. That's not really a subject for discussion like this. This is not. It's not appropriate topic for this public comment.
It isn't.
Yeah, you're relitigating something that's already happened.
Well, okay, let me not relitigate what already happened, and let me just point out that what did happen is that Mr. Johnson withdrew under severe circumstances brought about by one of the selectmen, and I feel that is just a horrible, horrible way for this to proceed. Now, I don't know whether this is litigating something or not. I mean, I'm just looking at what has happened, what's in the public record, what Mr. Johnson has said has happened, and that he was going to be taking a job which he felt he could no longer take because his reputation was being besmirched. I think that's an outrageous thing to have happen. I think it's an outrageous thing for a member of the Board of Selectmen to instigate, and if, in fact, the outcome of that is the reverse of what the board voted, I think that's a tremendous mistake. And I gather my 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Carol, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 things to bring to your attention. One is the Municipal Best Practices Conference that took place last week in Worcester, and I was able to attend, and I'm happy to report that about 75% of it was extremely valuable. They laid out the rules for the community compact and the things that we may continue to do and grants that we may continue to apply for. I also attended a breakout section on housing and economic development. And one of the presenters was Bob Halpin from Framingham, and it was amazing to see what they have in the works. And I'm very excited because, of course, Sherborn is looking at housing possibilities, so that's a great thing. They also talked about cybersecurity and the fact that Massachusetts government, at least, is in the bottom 4th of the states in cybersecurity. And so partly in response to that, Governor Baker has established, and it went into effect August 1, a new Secretariat for Technology. And one of the things they're going to be working on, in addition to security, which will also eventually expand to municipalities, is the ability to establish software and programs that will allow municipalities to collect data in the same manner so that we can easily share data from community to community and hopefully glean quite a bit from that possibility. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. So I will let you know what comes next. My other topic is no, I won't say that. I am distressed at the email that Eric Johnson has made public, and most of us have seen it. And in all the years I've been involved with municipal government, I have never seen such an egregious abuse of office. And I would ask the Board of Selectmen to look into this, what has happened, and I would call on you to censure the selectmen at fault. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Sue Tyler next.
Good evening, all. Susan Tyler, Western Avenue. My topic for tonight on the public comment, I have lots of topics to go, but I've only to do one. As far as the citizens petition, I know on your agenda later on, you're going to be talking about possibility of a special town meeting this fall. I'd like to find out sooner than later, because I will be doing, I've been requested by numerous people, and I want to do it. I will be putting it together as citizens petition with 200 signatures, if I need that, for to require a special fall town meeting, so that we can have a article that will be a recall of elected officials. We've tried this before. It's been muddied because the minute the citizens put one forward, one selectman will bring one forward, and enough is enough. And given the behavior of late, I think this town needs a recall of bylaw that allows for the recall of elected officials. Thank you.
Okay, good, we're done with public comment. What do we got now? Oh, look at this, consideration of a special town meeting.
Imagine that.
Okay, so we'd had a little discussion the last time about this. I think there was somewhat of a consensus that it might be a good thing to have a special town meeting. We floated a couple of dates. I don't think we'd made any firm decisions, so I would open it up for discussion.
I wasn't here for that discussion.
True.
So I gather this is because the planning board wants to bring forward an article, so could I suggest that we reverse the order here and hear, so I can get the
Have the
benefit of
planning board
hearing?
justify their request for the...
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
That's great. John, that's good. Come on up. We're catching up.
I've got a PowerPoint to talk about it, but the planning board met with the developer, Trask Company, on September 5th, and then on September 19th. And so when we made the request, I have an update basically on what we talked about on the 19th.
So can we just set that context? This is the Coolidge Street
Yep.
property.
Yep, this is what's now, there's a 40B proposal on one parcel and potentially another. There was another proposal on the adjacent property that was withdrawn, and well, we've got a small screen here. So we met with the developer, or not the planning board, but Eddie Mae Weiss and I. Eddie Mae is on the planning board. She's also chair of the Housing Partnership Committee. Met with the developer and talked about an alternative. The developer came back to us, and on September 5th, and as I say again on the 19th. So we've got some information about that proposal. You've seen what was presented on the PowerPoints from Ben Stevens, who's here. So you've seen that it's posted, I think those are posted on the town website as well. So this is just really an update of what we talked about last night. And last night, the planning board voted in favor of requesting the Board of Selectmen, we unanimously voted in favor requesting the Selectmen to hold a town meeting, special town meeting this fall, for a amendment to the zoning, the EA zoning, and potentially the planning board would enter into the process of a preliminary development plan for a development on this site.
Okay. Questions or comments from anybody else?
A question. It takes a lot of effort and costs and expense and so on to have a special town meeting. Why can't this wait till the annual town meeting? What's the thinking on that?
Well, it could. There's sort of two reasons, really. One is this project would, if it goes forward, would put us into safe harbor status relative to the 40B developments and potential 40B developments. So that's a good thing. So the sooner the better. So that's one reason. The other is there's an advantage with in focusing on a town meeting just focused on a zoning articles, on the zoning article in this project. I think it would really get very good focus. So I think it's an important decision. It's an opportunity. It's an important decision for the town, and I think it would get better focus if it was in a special town meeting. The primary reason, though, is the sooner we get this in place, if the town's in favor of it, requires 2/3 vote. If the town's in favor of it, the sooner this is in place, the sooner we're in safe harbor. And in this proposal would put us very close to the 10% goal and would keep us there for more than a decade.
My own experience with that in other towns is that zoning isn't an issue that often voters find of great interest. Or maybe that's the wrong word, it just becomes so technical that many voters feel they tune out on it. Whereas if it's mixed in with other things, then the voters will come for other things. So we've had, in other towns, the problem of getting a quorum to show up. The town here has a quorum requirement. And also some constituents have been in touch with me and the board. In fact, we received an email that the chair forwarded to us all. I wonder if we could read that into the record here. That was opposing a special
If
town
somebody
meeting.
has it, I didn't print that out. It's a long email, so.
Yeah, we all received a long email, all these reasons why we shouldn't have a special town meeting relating to the zoning issues in particular. David, do you have that?
I can pull it up.
Yeah, right, one or the other.
You want it read?
If you want to read, I don't think it's necessary to read every piece of correspondence we get into the record. I think it's probably not in anybody's interest to read every piece of correspondence we get into the record. So, I mean, you know, we can say, I can say I got an email from one of the wheelwrights, and I can't remember which one, because
It was Susie.
it was Susan, okay. And the comment was basically arguments against having a special town meeting. So whatever John said here, it was the opposite of what John said. Yeah, I mean, and people are going to have varied views on that. I don't know that it carries any more weight because it was written into an email, but, you know, you're welcome to introduce it, Paul, if you want to.
Well, it's just, I think that John should know what is being said. The problem with emails that come to the board, you don't have a chance to reply to them, so you don't know what's been said to us. I just wanted,
Well, I will.
for transparency.
If it's, and that's great, I'd be, that's fine. I will say that we had a lot of feedback in both meetings, on the September 5th and on the 19th. And there were some people opposed to it. One perspective was maybe the 40B development time has faded, will fade away. There will be, maybe we just won't have more 40B development. It's too hard to do 40B development in town. So that was one objection to pursuing this. I can say that the majority of the people at our meetings were in favor of, I guess, didn't take that position. And as I say, the planning board voted unanimously in favor of requesting a special town meeting. I'm also, Paul, I'm just shocked to hear that anybody would find zoning articles as not exciting.
That surprised me too, John.
Yeah. But in terms of complexity, we're talking about the EA zoning bylaw specifically relative to the 1 mile distance criteria, and we don't have, we've been talking about it at the planning board. We don't have a finalized draft for an amendment. But this project on Coolidge is not within a mile, so that actually came up after we decided we should look at amending this. The 1 mile criteria is a good criteria in terms of smart growth ideas about getting development closer to the town center, and specifically the town center services. So the idea is to consider other locations in town that might be just as close, or in some cases closer to town services, and satisfy the needs of EA by being close to services, but not necessarily our town center. We don't have any significant public transportation or some of the other services that are closer on the perimeter or elsewhere in our town. So that's one thing. We could consider either changing the 1 mile or changing the criteria that would say it has to be within 1 mile unless, and on a case-by-case basis, unless it's closer to similar or more services, that sort of thing. So it's not a complex topic. It's really tied to this other, in this case, it's really tied to this other development opportunity relative to a special town meeting. Otherwise, the other clarification in the EA zone is we want to make sure it's really clear that it reads elder and or affordable, which is how we've been interpreting it, but we want to clarify that. So those are very minor, they're not complex in terms of some zoning.
Well, I like the idea that the voters of the town will decide these issues. I think that's a better way to go than to have it done in a small committee. So I like the concept with this. The issue I have really is timing. And there also was a scheduling issue because there was talk about doing it on a day that had another town meeting in another town. So we got tangled up in scheduling.
This is a little bit weird. Rick set me up. I can try to project we came up with an alternative timing. What we did was we worked through the steps that would have to go forward if there's a special town meeting, sort of backing up from a town meeting date and then backing up advisory and what they need to do, the steps they need to take, the timing that was necessary for the planning board to hold hearings for the EA zone and for a preliminary development plan, and back all that up so that we can ensure that there's good communication with various boards and committees and the town at large, including we put on the timeline newspaper articles and things like that. Actually, this meeting is on that timeline. I can, but in any case, I can flick through to it. Oops, here. Let's see.
John, while you're looking for that, to reinforce what Paul was saying, one of the things that, when I was on the planning board, we looked at the Pulte proposal, EA proposal for Maple Street. The EA bylaw really gives town meeting control over the process.
Yeah.
Planning board makes an initial determination whether or not there's enough information to bring it to town meeting. It requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. It's project-specific. If it gets approved at town meeting, and this is very different from the 40B project, the EA zoning gives the town control to give guidance and to hopefully reach agreement on what the project's going to look like, completely unlike the 40B proposal. But if it's approved at town meeting by a 2/3 vote, the planning board then gets involved in the permitting, and that gets very specific. But the initial determination by the planning board is simply whether or not there's enough information presented to merit town meeting consideration.
Right.
I hope that's an accurate
Yeah,
summary.
that is. And once that plan is approved, in order for anything different to happen there, it would have to be voted on by town meeting again.
Right.
So it gives the town tremendous control. So I put up this, this is a revised, the package I sent you, I had a Gantt chart that was hard to read. The font was very small. So this is small font, but it's a little bit better. It just lists the several steps that has to happen. But at the very end, I have town meeting on November 14th, and everything else backs up from there. Alternatively, the next week, or in December 5th, that also works. I'm concerned about pushing it any further. And I also am concerned about trying to do it sooner than November 14th, just because there are notifications, and we really want to get this properly vetted in public meetings. So,
Concerned about advisory meeting in 2004. That's a tough one to hit. What date is that supposed to be?
I don't think there's supposed to be.
Well, that was,
there's yeah, that would be difficult. That's just, shouldn't even be there. The due dates are, that's just to provide some, in some cases, to provide some ideas of the range when things need to occur.
So do you think you would be ready as a planning board by whenever you need to be ready for an 11/14 town meeting? And would you be able to inform the town by that point?
There's a lot that has to happen, and there's dates that are just filler dates in here, because these dates are really hypothetical. I just put in a bunch of dates, really. But there are, the things in yellow are the time-critical ones where there's specific requirements for notification and time, like getting it, a mailing out and things like that. So we think we can get it done on November 14th. Obviously, it would be better if it was the first week in December.
I kind of feel that way too, looking at your
Yeah.
chart and just thinking
Yeah,
that there is a risk that people who haven't been following the process quite as closely are to think this is something that's being, railroaded
Right.
through, rushed through.
right.
Even though I know you and Addie and others have spent a ton of time, talked to Ben Stevens, looked at plans, talked with your committees, but it's a potential issue that maybe
Right.
3 more weeks would help take some of that
Yeah,
pressure away.
agreed.
Mike, can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, sure.
Just
I'll open it
from
up.
an advisory standpoint, December 5th would probably work better for us, because that would allow us to focus on getting our guidance out now and then being able to have a public hearing after that's completed.
Okay.
That's our big thing we have to get done in the fall, so I think the later the better for us.
Yeah. Others had people, I saw their hands up. Yeah, Marion.
I just wanted to comment to make sure that everybody listening understands that there would actually be 2 articles at town meeting. One to change the zoning manual, and the other to consider this particular EA project. And as far as changing the wording in the zoning manual and the philosophy in the zoning manual, we've been talking about that for a long time, long before this project came up. So I think as far as justifying changing or even eliminating the 1 mile restriction. We have a lot of good thinking already done on that. And as it stands right now, it really is an unworkable zoning article, regardless of this particular development. For example, we have to make sure that our EA zoning articles are in line with the options that are favored in the housing production plan. Not just this particular large one, but even smaller ones that may occur as EA projects around town, or very small additional affordable housing options that we may need to keep above the 10%. So, not to get into any detail, but I think we could be ready with a better worded zoning article, certainly by that time. Whether the project, and all of that, the specific EA project that would take the 2/3 vote is going to be the big job.
Right, and when you were talking about the two articles, one would be the bylaw itself, amending the text of the bylaw. The other would be a rezoning of a specific parcel
That's right.
into an EA zone based on a proposed project that would be outlined to town meeting.
Exactly, thank you.
And John, at one point in time when we, it seems like a long time ago, it was probably last year, there was at least a brief discussion, I think, between the two of us. Maybe it was in public, maybe it wasn't, but you talked about you hope to have a comp plan ready for a town vote by a fall town meeting, if one was held. Is that still on the table? Or are we going to have a planning board presentation of a master plan, or are we not quite there yet?
I'm not quite there yet. The goal is to get it done this year, but we're not proposing that the general plan be presented at the special town meeting.
Okay. So that's kind of slipped off to the spring, we hope?
In terms of presentation, yeah, the plan should be done at the end of the year.
Okay. But in terms that you at one point at least, you wanted the town to endorse that
Yeah.
plan, okay. So Tyler?
Yeah, this ties back to my public comment regarding a citizen's petition for a special fall town meeting. If I took just over a week to get the signatures, that would actually be, if I turned it in October 1st, that would be the 45 days that is required for the town to have the meeting, once that petition is date of November 14th.
Yeah, I don't think that's a realistic date from everything we just said. I think December 5th is a more realistic date, so you have more time to collect your signatures.
I don't need much time. But the November 14th would be 45 days from October 1st if I turned it in on that day.
Well, maybe we'll have to.
That wouldn't be the first
That would be
time.
ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be the first time this had happened, but,
So I think the issue
yeah.
is your schedules, and if the high school is available.
I mean,
I thought we were gonna have a chart of what the days the high school
High
and the
school
Pine Hill are
is
available.
available on the 14th, it's already booked, and I called Pine Hill, and they're available every night for the first 3 weeks in November.
yeah, I mean, based on this discussion, I don't think you're ready on November 14th. I don't really think the town's ready on November 14th. I mean, to me, that seems like a rush. That's less than 2 months from now to go start to finish with a rezoning.
The schedule is doable, but it certainly would be better. There'd be more time, for sure.
But, you know, my feeling is if you want it to
Yeah.
pass, you're going to
Yeah.
pick up votes if you give people a little more time to think about it and understand it and ask
Yeah.
questions, and there aren't, you know, as many chances of last-minute changes and things like that.
Right.
I mean, that would be my...
Is there a timing issue for the second proposal that Miriam was talking about for the specific project? Is there a timing issue, the reason to have it this fall rather than the next spring?
Yeah, because of the ability to block further 40Bs in town, unwanted 40Bs. If we decide later we want some other project, it's under our control. So getting control of the 40B, the unwanted 40B projects is the primary goal first. I mean, that's the reason for doing it as soon as possible.
I have a special town meeting on December 5, too, so would December 6 work?
Yeah,
Just 1 day difference.
right. Okay,
I have a special town meeting on December 4th, December 5.
Well, we all have stuff to do. We've all got jobs. We just have to try to make it work for everybody. David, what did you find out about early December meetings, or Diane?
I didn't go that far. I thought we were gonna stick to November.
Yeah, because there's sometimes concerts and things like that.
I'll check on that.
Well, Except I think we've got to make a decision soon.
We have a meeting on the 27th, which is 6 days from now.
No, that's true. We do have a meeting on the 27th.
So we could ask,
We'll bring dates.
Well, maybe we should make a decision now, subject to Diane telling us on the 26th whether we've got the dates, or the 27th, or whatever day it is. Carol?
A couple of things. And this, my first comment is based on anecdotal experience from people who come and go in town hall and who bump into me in the supermarket and things, but there's been so much focus by the planning board on housing lately, and they've done a really great job. And I think Sherborn has had kind of a 40B glut scare, if you would, in the last year, and so a lot of people are talking about it. I don't think we'll have any problem whatsoever in having a quorum for a fall town meeting on 40B and changing the zoning to, and especially when you lay out your reasoning. And I think you've done so far a really good job with that. People are engaged in it, they're talking about it. So I don't think getting a quorum is going to be a problem. I would urge you tonight to pick a date, at least one date and one backup date. I don't know quite how you can handle this for sure, but if you get a citizen petition that comes in the next week or two and you have to call, you're forced to call a special within 45 days, I don't want to see you in the position where you get two specials called this fall. So just think about that.
Well, I think the way to control that, which didn't happen a few years ago, is the people who are putting the petition have some consultation or consideration for the cost to the town of having two meetings. We know we're going to have a fall town meeting, so if the timing's important, then I would encourage people to play along.
Well, I would encourage you to take that into consideration. And the third thing is, I think at your last time you talked about specials, I asked if you were wedded to a Tuesday night special because that forced me to be open on a Saturday and staff the office for 11 hours. However, upon doing my homework, I found that we have adopted a statute that allows us to treat Saturdays as holidays, so I can shift the registration back to Friday. So I no longer have a problem with Tuesday nights. Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting us know that. Anybody have any suggestions here?
well, my suggestion was to get dates from Diane. And pick one of those.
6th and 7th. If he can't do the 5th, he shouldn't be doing it.
So the 6th to the 7th, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You go any later and you're in danger of.
The holidays, the harder it will be to get
Yeah.
a quorum.
I was at the Tuesday night planning board meeting. There was quite a turnout. Quite a lot of interest in that topic. And when you moved on, a lot of people left. In the past, we've been deferential to wards and worked with them to try and schedule. I think the 6th makes sense, gives us more time to do it. I know a lot of work has already been done. There's also a ton of work that needs to be done, but I'd be supportive of tentatively scheduling December 6th as a special town meeting, subject to the availability of Linquist.
Okay. Is it a motion?
It is.
Okay. Do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
There a motion second
I
for
was wondering if we should
discussion?
include, yeah, I wonder if we should include the backup
Yeah, that's a
of
good
the
idea.
7, so we can just roll to it.
That's a good idea.
And I wonder if we should include Pine Hill as the backup.
Well, the location is, Diane, whichever.
He said
we
Lincoln's
get.
Commons.
Oh, you said Lincoln's Commons?
Yeah, I did.
Did. Do you think it's critical that it be in Dover?
No, and we had a special town meeting in Pine Hill, and it was pretty well attended.
We've had multiple there.
The governance task force proposal was at Pine Hill, so, yeah, let me withdraw that motion and move to approve December 6th. Any suggestions about a backup date
I think Sean says December 7th was the backup date.
with December 6th or 7th as a tentative dates, providing we can find availability of suitable site?
Okay.
I'll second that one.
All right. Any further discussion on this? As I'm putting it in my calendar. Okay, all in favor of that?
I should put it in my calendar too.
Okay. Excellent. Hey, John, thank you. Thanks for all the hard work on this. Addie and Marion and everybody else on your committees, keeping this chugging along.
Okay.
And
There's,
thanks for keeping the dialogues open. It's great.
okay, I put together some slides to discuss it, but
Oh, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead. You get the floor.
you know what, I
don't think-
was
George,
told
you
a
don't
long
mind, do
time
you?
ago, when you get what you want, get out.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Just, I think every opportunity
got a
is
forum.
is an opportunity. You might as well.
so I want to say this before, I was going to get a commercial in. We are going to have a forum on the town center on October 3rd. So that's just a commercial to, we've had some meetings already on the town center, so this will be a forum on it. And I think, I'm looking at Marion because she's the one that driving the whole process. But the outline, the town center outline is posted.
It is posted, but there's a glitch in the posting, so it's asking for a password to get into it. But
Okay.
that'll be fixed.
We'll
Yes,
fix
it's
it.
posted.
All right, so that was my commercial.
Okay.
So this is just a background, and we've already covered this, I think, but on the 19th, we talked about saying we think there's good reason for the town meeting on December 6th. Because we have an opportunity to reach safe harbor and an opportunity in the long term to actually reach 10% affordable, so that we can prevent the unwanted developments and the loss of open space that's associated with that, that we can add desirable housing in a controlled manner. That's a big deal. And then the tax revenue impact on schools and town infrastructure. This proposal from Trash Company gives us a real advantage over if they were just 40Bs. So we looked at that. And here's an excerpt from their proposal that's posted on the town website. This is part of their proposal comparing a 40B project to making a 66-unit over 55 community instead. So this is going to all go through more discussion, more discussion about other differences. We had some great discussion on the 19th about sidewalks and a lot of other aspects to this. But the biggest thing is that changing 88 units down to 66, they're over 55. They don't burden the town with nearly as much infrastructure costs, primarily school costs. And then it puts a control on that site by zoning.
John, how many of those are affordable in that proposal?
In this section, 10%, so that the SHI number, the affordable number percentage is really that 10%
It's the 7
goal.
that we need to stave off the 2 years, the housing plan?
Yep. But it also gives us, that's right, and it also gives us, it means that this development would not put us further behind as if it was a 40B development, yeah. So we looked at various scenarios, and we're still in this process. We created a bunch of different scenarios and to compare the total number of home units and if they were both 40B, if neither were 40B, and different mixes. And we looked at different scenarios, and this is an excerpt of what we looked at. And it's fine print, but the top section, is all affordable house units, so there's numbers there associated with different projects, including Woodhaven and Leland, and then the market rates and the existing, and over time. And that's how we calculate the 10%. We look at the total number of houses in town, when the census is calculated, and when these things get developed. We made guesses. Whitney Farm, we don't really know how that's going to progress. We know they've started the lottery process for affordable units, but we don't know, so we just made guesses, and it's a spreadsheet so we can continue doing that and refining it. But the goal is to figure out how we stay in safe harbor, and then really how do we get to 10%. So in looking at all that, with those assumptions, which can change, it says, gee, it looks like some scenarios work and some don't. Some work, but don't get us there for a while. So we're at risk to other unwanted 40B development. We also said, hey, there's a chance, we've got large parcels in town, Maple Street, but we've got other large parcels in town that are at risk if the property owner decides to sell it or develop it. It could be a 40B, it could be other kinds of development. But if it's a 40B, we're at risk until we reach that control. So these scenarios compare different ways to get there, or if we don't do something, we won't get there. So that's what that's all about. We already talked about the timing. So that's the gist of it.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
John, can I ask you a question about scenario 2?
Yeah.
There's a second project that was discussed at Tuesday night's meeting, which was a rental units on an adjacent property.
Correct.
My understanding is under 40B, all of those would count towards the 10% SHI number.
Correct.
How many units are being discussed?
The original
for that?
proposal for that site was 84, and we talked about 88. It could be more than that. Because it's 25% are affordable, under the state laws, all of them count as affordable. So from our point of view, there's sort of plus and minus. There's housing density, there's just limitations on what can go on that site. But from one perspective, the more that are there, as long as they reach the criteria of that affordability, the more that are there, that's the larger the number, the closer to that 10%. We're close either way. In one scenario, at 88 units, depends on these other sites and things and what happens, but we'd be short by about 20 units to get to 10%. We could achieve that other ways. A Woodhaven 2, or conversion of a single family to duplex, 1 or 2 a year would do that. So there's other strategies to get the last few if we can't do it on this site. But the other option is, sorry, Chuck, to answer that site, that number 88 is the maximum number that can be there without permission from the town to put more.
Right, that's the 40B limitation on large projects. That
right.
If it's a locally initiated petition, it could be a larger number.
Yep.
And those rental units, every one of them counts towards the 10% threshold.
Correct, every one.
But just to be clear, the article we talked about, the EA article, is not this rental project.
Correct.
It's a different project.
Yeah.
Is this project tied in a way that if the EA thing goes down to defeat at town meeting, what happens to this?
To which? Which is this?
The 88.
The rental? It's a 40B, it can go ahead either way. But we've been in touch with town council and we're discussing if there's ways to tie that And we discussed it on, with Mr. Stevens on the 19th. So we're looking at ways to tie it up. I'm going to guess if we took a vote in this room, it would probably be however many in this room versus one. You know, I just imagine that there'd be some desire to not tie it on the part of the developer, but if there's a way to tie the two together, we're looking at that.
Thank you.
But the answer is, really, the answer is the other sites of 40B proposal and if there's, either we find some way to tie it or it's going to go, it can remain as a 40B proposal. Right now, it's until November 1st, right? It's withdrawn.
We submitted the site eligibility application, but we cannot submit the comp permit until December 1.
Right, okay.
And one thing we could do as a town, if we could work out terms on a project that made sense for the town, is do a local initiative project, which would be a 40B process with the town being an advocate
Right.
and having a stake in the outcome of the
That's
project.
right.
So
Yeah, and there's strong advantages to that.
that's, that's a way to help control what happens if the developer and the town can reach an agreement outside of the 40B hearing room.
Right, it's basically an agreement. It's
agreement, it's a process, it's a way to make it,
Right.
much more of a public venture with, with the private developer, so.
Okay,
Great, thanks, John.
thank you.
George, you're gonna save farmland now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Point of order. Your next topic is actually the discussion of a special election.
Oh, we did skip that, didn't we?
Yes.
I'd like to get George out of here, though, if we can, unless you're planning on running in that special election for something, are you? I'm happy to. Okay, all right.
So, George, if you stay, it means you have to run for one of those positions that's up for election.
All right, so special election consideration. We didn't get very far with this discussion the last time either, did we?
No,
No.
I was wondering even why it was continued on to the agenda.
Well, I think the question is whether we want to have an election to fill a missing selectman position.
Yeah,
My inclination would be very much to do that, actually.
okay.
I think we've got a much better board with 5 members on it. We've got more flexibility if people can't make meetings. We've got, more of a basis for diverse discussions. We'll have a quorum if somebody's on vacation, and somebody else can't talk about whatever topic it is we're supposed to talk about. I mean, to me, even though it's an expense, it makes sense to me to fill this seat. We'll have a good 5 or 6 months before town elections. I don't know how others feel.
Well, this has come up in the past, and we usually have not done it. We've let it go to the annual election. There's a whole process. There's a caucus. There's other candidates for other positions. You have people expect an election at the regular time. You put an election at an odd time, you get very low turnout. History, I think, in the Commonwealth is not good for special elections in terms of turnouts. Much better if it's part of the regular process. And there's an expense associated with it. So that's been the history. I think during the time that I've been on the board, I don't think we've ever had a special election for a vacancy. I can't remember the last time there was a special election for a vacancy. So it's got to go way, way back if that's ever happened.
Chuck, you got thoughts, or Sean?
Mike, like you, I've always been in favor of a 5-member board. So
Really?
yeah, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but for the reasons that you've articulated, I mean, it's easier to schedule. We're now a 4-member board, and we're all busy. So I'm in favor of having a special town election.
Okay. Sean, any
It's
thoughts?
almost unfair to bring this up while at the tail end of a lot of emails in the past week, just trying to get three of us in one place on a morning that was gonna work for the tax classification hearing, which is a pretty important deal. There had to be at least 30 emails. Can anyone make this? Can anyone make that? Can anyone make that? For a 5-minute meeting. And that's 4 of us, and we just needed 3. So, you gotta imagine that would have been, the logistics of that would have been easier with that 5th member.
Okay.
And I also think we're just gonna save Sue the trouble of going to get the signatures. She only needs 200 signatures. She'll get them at the same time she's getting the town meeting, so.
Anybody else have any
It's
comments?
inevitable.
Anybody have any comments? Carol?
Well, I can speak to the cost. If I cost everything out as it could be, I get one figure. If I cost everything out as I know how it will shake out, we're under $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a bad price to pay for having a full board of selectmen for an extra 6 months. We do need a 64-day time frame.
64-day?
So December 24th, 25th, December 25th?
Who the hell came up with 64?
Sorry, that's November 25th, never mind.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
You've scheduled a special town meeting for George's birthday, so.
That's why we did it that way. Well, around that same time, though, wouldn't be bad for an election then, right? That would make the 64 days. Early December.
We'd have to, that's 64 days from a warrant.
Okay. So if we did a warrant on Tuesday, or next Wednesday when we meet, we could do it 64 days from then? Okay.
Just do it the same day and make that an official polling place.
I'm sorry?
Do it the same day and make Pine Hill an official polling place.
I wonder if you can do that.
People can vote on the way into town meeting.
I don't have time to advertise a polling place change.
No.
I tried.
All right, so do we want to vote on this? Do we have a motion? Motion to schedule a special town meeting and to authorize David to prepare a warrant, or whoever prepares it, I guess David.
Election.
Election. And authorize David to prepare the warrant, or have town council prepare the warrant for us to consider next Wednesday. Somebody going to second this?
Do we have a motion?
I think that was my motion.
Second.
Discussion. Is it just for a selectman seat? There was an open trustee seat, there was an open, at least a library trustee, should we ask them?
We cannot legally add a board or committee member other than a selectman on this special election. The only other things you can add are town officers. And I verified that with the Elections Division a couple weeks ago. The statute for boards and committees reads till the next annual town election,
Right.
but it's different for selectmen and town officers. So I would encourage you to also put the town treasurer position on this ballot.
We have a treasurer. Already got one.
Well, we do, but
David, you don't want
it's a
to
stopgap
chime in here?
measure.
We've posted it for 60 days.
Yeah.
We have a finalist that,
Oh, we do. Good.
yeah, that's a
Alright.
good candidate to be coming in the next couple of meetings. We want to wait for the assistant treasurer to come back.
So that'll be an interim position, and then at next town meeting, the idea is to fill the treasurer slot?
You could appoint the person to the completion of the full term or until the next election. I think I would prefer that they get appointed to the full term so that they
I don't know why
have,
anybody would take a job that's for 64 days, right?
Yeah.
Right, so I mean, I think your idea of appointing for the rest of the term makes more sense to me, even though, you know, ideally you'd have an election, but we need to fill that position.
yeah, I mean, there was nobody that was interested in just doing it till, to run in the spring.
Okay, so we'll have to still find a candidate for the spring. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if you appoint for the full term, I have a good candidate. But if you're going to have them run in the spring for that position, they would rather fill out the full term as an appointment rather than be running for it in the spring.
Oh, you're talking about trying to appoint somebody for the next 2 years, not just
Yeah.
until the next election?
Yeah.
Okay. Carol?
I would, to me, that
Year and a half.
feels like you're taking the decision away from the people. It's an elected position. And if you appoint somebody to serve for 2 years, that feels wrong to me. I know it's allowable, but it doesn't meet the spirit.
It's not 2 years, though. It's less than a year and a half by the time.
It's a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a position that
Either way.
you want a town resident to be learning it and then run for it. That's the ideal.
I think we can decide if and when this person comes in front of us for an appointment, we can decide how long the appointment would be,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah. You can appoint till the end of the year and then extend the appointment if you want to.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to have a special town election for a selectman seat.
You do.
Further discussion, all in favor of that? Opposed
Abstain.
and abstain, okay. Great. George, now I think you can come on up if you would, and thanks for coming back in. When George was here the last time, we had some discussion about this agricultural preservation restriction. I had some questions about some of the language. George was kind enough to get Rural Lands Council in touch with me, and we talked about language, and there were some revisions made that came out of that discussion, and I'm very satisfied with the changed language.
Thanks, Mike, very much. Yes, I think we got through really, I think we got through everything last week, except there was a provision in Section 4 of the APR that appeared, anyway, to certainly the selectmen to be in conflict with other provisions in the APR relative to public access. And so Karen Jennings-Flynn, who was representing us, did modify that section, which we hope now would satisfy the selectmen. And I have to say, I think it, myself, I think it makes a good deal of sense. So it's very simple. Section 4 actually started on the page before, but there's no language other than just indicating access, that's all. So this is the entire Section 4 in the top of this page 7. So you see the modified language, and if that meets with your approval, then I would ask that you would vote to endorse the APR as we have it currently drafted.
And this is still subject to the state approval, or have
Yes.
you already obtained the state?
No. Well, they've certainly seen it, but they're the last ones to sign on it. And we've had the Hudson Walkers have signed it. I am about to sign it myself, and we're asking you to, at which point we'd then send it on to the state. The only little glitch, I would say, is that I was hoping to have Karen here or somebody as a notary, because not only do the Hudson Walkers and
Carol's still out in the hall.
Carol's there.
Carol said she's not currently a notary.
She's not a notary, okay.
And Karen is, and she can be here, but not till 8:15, and I suspect by then you're in executive session.
Well, we could break out if she shows up and
Well,
do
if,
that.
she said she would come down and just notarize your signatures and mine, if that's okay.
Diane's a notary also?
Diane's a notary, that's right.
No,
Okay, so
I asked Diane earlier, and today she said she's not.
Everybody's denying they're a notary. I don't know what's going on here. Okay.
I was up until about a week ago, but I retired, so.
I was as a young associate, but I quickly learned to get rid of that.
She can notarize the board, and but there is something to do if it's a real estate transaction, but she might not have understood what it was for. If she's notarizing your signatures, then she can do it.
That doesn't sound right. She's either a notary or she's not a notary.
I'm saying what she's comfortable with doing.
Oh, because she knows us? Is what you're saying?
She told me that she wasn't a notary, so.
All right, well, whatever, we'll get it done one way or another, George, if assuming everybody else is okay with the
Yeah, good,
change.
a good catch last time, Mike. This language, I think, takes care of it perfectly. I'd move to approve the APR as amended.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's great.
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, George.
So, would you like me to get Karen to come down, or?
Sure, yeah, and just have her knock on the door when
All
we're
right.
if we're in executive session.
Probably would be about 8:15 or so,
Okay.
or is there a better time for you?
No, is anybody else in the room here a notary? No, so I don't think there's a better time. I think that's probably the only way to do it.
Thank you very much.
I'll try to go really slowly from now on, George, so we can get till 8:15. That's great. Thanks, George. Thanks for coming in with that and for setting up this whole deal. That's great for the town. It's great for the town. All right, routine business. David?
I don't have anything to report right now.
You have nothing, okay. Any selectmen items? Anybody?
Yeah, I do.
Paul?
Well, earlier today, there was public comment, and they made reference to the CM&D director thing. And they made reference to an email that apparently the candidate had sent around. I want to be sure everybody knows that I have had no interaction whatsoever with that particular applicant. And from what I've seen of the email that was circulated, it is false. It contains false information. So I just wanted that for the record.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Anybody else have anything to report?
I would just add to that this board has done a lot of good things. I don't think this hiring process has been one of them, and that we collectively own that. And I've already expressed that to the two leading candidates, but it's a collective responsibility. It's taken longer than it should have, and it's been more contentious, personal, and politicized than it should have been. So I think we as a board collectively own that responsibility. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Sean, you got any reports?
No.
Okay, I don't either. Diane, we've got some minutes here.
Yes.
Okay.
I had an edit on one of the minutes, and
I did it. The edit was just to add it to the minutes when he arrived, and I took care of that.
Let's see.
What just happened?
What's that? I don't know, somebody.
Was everyone asked to leave?
Maybe our minutes aren't that interesting.
Something we said?
I had a quick question about the spelling of Lauren Haney's name. Is it Lauren or A-N? On
I
the,
don't know, I'll have to go back and look at my record.
it just, A-N is an unusual spelling, so
I'm gonna go back.
it could be right, but,
I'll check that.
Paul, you had a comment, I think, right?
yeah, she put it in the
Got it.
minutes. It was simply to record the time that I had arrived late at a meeting.
Okay.
And so when you read the minutes, it doesn't reflect my being there, and then all of a sudden, it has me voting on things. So I put a line in there that
Okay.
I arrived
Good idea.
at this point in the discussion.
No, that's a good idea, good idea. All right, so do we have a motion to approve these very thorough minutes?
So moved.
We have a second?
second.
All in favor of the minutes? Okay, great. All right. All right, next meeting, we've already talked about 9:26 at 8 AM. Can we set the 9:27 one at 6:30 instead of 6? See if a little later start time is easier getting out of Boston for Paul and me, or is that a problem?
No, I think that's a great idea. It is, to make the 6 o'clock meeting at least from Cambridge, you end up having to leave at like 2 to be sure you're going to get here. The traffic is just horrendous.
2 o'clock.
Well, okay, 3 o'clock.
At least that's what you tell people, right, Chuck?
I drive slowly. Some of us drive the speed limit, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
But yeah, that 6:30 makes good sense.
You're lucky to be able to get your speed up to the speed limit.
All right, so
I find myself
so we'll
doing
try-
20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour.
we'll try starting these at 6:30. Maybe people will be a little better fed also when they show up, and it might be a little easier on people. And we'll, it's an experiment. If it doesn't work, we can do something different. Okay, so the one thing we left open was this executive session description, so I think we should have a discussion of that.
Probably recuse myself.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's fine, Sean. So Sean's going to recuse from this discussion. Do you want to stick around to sign this APR, or you don't have to? I mean,
No,
I
I
think we'll
will.
have 3 people.
I will, I just-
Okay. All right, so,
So there was a motion that Chuck had made and I had seconded, and we agreed to defer it to this point.
right.
And that motion was to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Facilities manager, probationary CM&D director, Sean Killeen.
So can I ask David, I mean, I know he's thought about 50 million different ways to try to fill this position, and I'm not sure what his latest thought is, but what are you advising, or what do you think is feasible?
Well, to me, my immediate need is I have a lot of facilities projects, and I talked to Chuck, and we're way behind in them. They're matters of life safety, and I need to get them rolling.
Yep.
We waited too long. We had the well issue come up, the library stuff come up, the generator issue, the police department roof, police department HVAC, fire, the alarm panels, the doors at the fire department, doors at the CMD.
CM&D, right.
They're all things that were approved in that
And this is
capital
stuff
plan.
you're moving along, but you haven't been able to move it along because you're doing all these other things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about the number of temporary positions and responsibilities we keep putting on David's plate, so I'm particularly concerned about the filling the facilities manager position.
Okay. So what's the proposal, and what are we doing about CM&D then?
So I can, if, there are a couple of ways you could go. The board can continue to discuss that issue and authorize me to take immediate action on addressing the needs of these building and facility needs, which I need to do.
You mean you'd hire somebody or appoint somebody to do that?
Yes. In that limited role, which is, those positions are in the personnel admin plan, and they're under my authority to hire, but not to hire unless I'm authorized by the board to do so.
All right, and then we would still have the CM&D vacancy, though.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're trying to address here. If I could, we did have a vote in July. We have a vacancy. The vote in July was to offer the position to one candidate, and if not, then offer it to another. We have the position vacant since April. If you recall, back in April, I had moved to fill the position with an acting interim, and the board decided not to do that. We are coming up on the winter season. We're coming up on, we may get storms. We just are being lashed with this latest hurricane on Nantucket, not here in Sherborn, but it could have been here. We need to have a person in charge of CM&D. So to implement the vote of July 27th and to treat the positions as joint, because that's how we advertised the C&D position, as one that would be both the C&D and the facilities guy. That was part of the combination of duties. That's what we interviewed for. The idea was to fill the facilities manager and to have a probationary C&D director and see how that goes for a period of time, 6 months or so. And then we revisit it at a later point. But that'll take us through the winter storms, make sure that somebody's in charge there.
Your vote was to begin contract negotiations. I think what you are discussing are iterations of what that contract would look like. So I just think it would be better done in executive session.
Yeah, right now we're just talking about what the motion is. There's a motion to go into executive session
Right.
that Chuck has made and I've seconded.
Yeah, we're discussing that. So I mean, you know, I'll take issue with one thing, Paul, and maybe return to something Chuck said too. We own this process, but this process is unlike any other hiring process I've been involved in this town. I think it's very much like hiring processes in other towns. This process was captured by politics, and it was captured by personalities, and it made it nearly impossible to focus on getting that position filled in a way that made sense for the town. It just was a very difficult process. And I also take exception to the fact that we voted for anything particular on July 27th. I think David's right, we voted to start contract negotiations, but we voted with a certain set of assumptions about what the process would look like from that point on, and I don't think those assumptions, for whatever reason, came to fruition. So from my standpoint, I don't feel bound by that vote. On the other hand, I do agree that this is a appropriate potential solution for the town. I'm not opposed to the motion that Chuck is making, but I just want to be heard that I don't see things quite the same way as maybe you, Paul, or Chuck.
Well, the point for the change in the executive session is that, well, you don't feel bound by that vote. My sense is that the public is entitled to know if we are doing something different than that vote, what that vote is. So if we were going to not follow that vote, it's a discussion like we're having here that the public's entitled to hear, and not have us go into executive session and secretly vote to not follow a vote that people thought we took, that we did take, that some of us didn't feel was binding or whatever. I just wanted to have it out.
Yeah, I was always happy to have this discussion at an open session of the board. I wasn't looking to do anything like this behind the scenes.
So can we vote before somebody repeats that winter is coming? Like Eddard Stark in Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I just,
Vote, go ahead.
Just call the question, so.
Okay, so Mr. Yan,
aye.
Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
And I'll be aye too. So we're going to go into executive session. I'll read the, if Diane gave me the piece of paper. Did you give me the piece of paper, Diane? I have to read? Yes, you did. Thank you. Executive session, Chapter 38, Section 21-2, to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Facilities manager, probationary C&D director, Sean Colleen. The board will not return to open session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
We had the second by Mr. Yan. Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Yan, aye, and I'm aye. Having passed by a vote of 3-0 with one abstention, the open session is now closed. We will not be returning to open session. We are now in executive session.
Okay.